dearest darling Helen, I started this letter 3 days ago. I can't seem to put down on this piece of paper that we're shipping out.
Something happened.
Da Nang, Vietnam, May 1967. Dear Mom, I've just arrived in Nan's tune of chocolate plates, and the blare of gunfire, and the sound of fireworks, and no 4th of July celebration. But have no fear. I got both feet on the ground and surrounded by fellow Marines. A bunch of guys from all over the states. Heck, even a few from good old Philly. Now, being you both know my penmanship wasn't the best, so bear with me when it comes to writing. Also, the chowder is okay, but I sure do miss your lasagna. Keep smiling, Mom. You always been my best friend.
My name is Barbara Berry, but my friends call me Bass, and I was a camp follower. Now don't get your drawers twisted. Most people, when they hear the words camp follower, immediately think of the girls that hung around army camps selling their company to homesick young men. I'm not one of those kind of gals.
Nope, I'm a married woman. After the president declared war in Germany, Barry, my husband, enlisted and was sent down to Louisiana for basic training. So I took the first bus out of Lawton, Oklahoma to join him.
Vietnam, June 1968. Dear Betsy, I'm writing this letter to tell you some things, because you see, here in this flying business, you never know when your next flight will be your last. Please don't think I'm being morbid here, but we all need to recognize what is happening here in Vietnam. I'm trying to be a comfort to you, but the distance separating us makes it very difficult for me to do so. All I can say is that you're in my thoughts every sortie I join.
Chicago, June 1968. Dear Jack, your words make me cry. I see in my teacup in the morning, in the mirrors I get dressed, and in every young man I see on the street. I know you're doing the right thing over there, but every night when I turn on the television news and I see men burning draft cards and angry crowds shouting horrible things about our servicemen, I just don't know which way to turn. Help me to understand, Jack.
No, baby, don't get yourself so upset. I know we're trying to do the right things over here. All I need to hear is that you're with me in this conflicted, unpopular war. I think I'm strong enough to look past these times of uncertainty, as well as to accept immortality. If my plane is not returned tomorrow, I'll die without regrets.
Korea, May 1953. Dear Agnes, the heat is unbearable here in Korea. Pork Chop Hill is no place to spend a Sunday afternoon, especially if you don't want to get shot at.
Atlanta, May 1953. Dear Johnny, Grandma Johnson is just crazy about Johnny Jr. She says he's getting to look more and more like you each day. But your mother insists that he takes after me more. You would be so proud to see how good he is while we say the rosary after supper.
I used to dread those Sunday evening rosaries when I was a boy, knowing that fresh milk and donuts would be served afterwards. My impatience always seemed to cause some kind of disturbance. Gee, Johnny Jr. seems to be growing up like his old man.
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. CNN Center right now is just beginning to work on this.
Barry met my bus and I arrived in Alexandria, Louisiana.
We needed a place for me to stay, so we found ourselves knocking on doors for hours. And after hours of, sorry buddy, but we don't got no spare rooms to rent, we came across a lady and her 3 kids sitting on her front porch.
Barry asked her if she had any spare rooms to rent. She said she had 4 rooms with no inside facilities except running water in the kitchen.
But she said if that was all right with us, she could put up a bed in the living room. Her husband was in the hospital, so she needed money to pay rent and feed the kids.
Barry found an old Davenport at a used furniture store not far from the house. So with the help of some of his army buddies, they carried it down the gravel road to the little house.
Later, she moved her and her kids moved to the back bedroom, and she rented her room out to Sally and Joe Malone from up north. Mrs. C, as I called her, also allowed us kitchen privileges.
One day, Mrs. C told me that her landlord, Mr. Sweeney, gave her notice to vacate the house because she was renting a house to build repute.
Well, he put it more bluntly. He said, quote, "You and your kids gotta move out."
You ain't running no poorhouse on my property.
Mrs. C told me and Sally, gals, get your husbands and your marriage licenses ready. We're going to court. Mrs. C couldn't afford a lawyer, so she pleaded her case herself and won. So we stayed and became known as Mrs. C's camp followers. Now I tell you, Madam C was a saint to us, and in no way was she any other kind of madam. She took care of me and Sally and other camp followers as we came along, like we were her own family. I was 17 when 9/11 happened. That morning, the television in the living room was blaring reports of airplanes crashing into buildings in New York City. I told my mom and dad that I was going to do my part to see that this horrible thing never again happened to our country. So I joined my high school's ROTC, and after graduating that fall in May, I joined the Army. I belong to the most honorable club in America, the Gold Star Mothers. When a husband or son is sent to war, a blue star is given to their family. When a husband or son is injured, a silver star is displayed. But when a husband or son is killed in combat, a gold star is given to that family, so that folks everywhere remember the sacrifice that this family has made for our beloved country.
I proudly displayed my 3 blue stars in my modest house in Modesto. Folks would walk by and stop there, and some even salute. Passerby would always ask if it was my husband or sons, and I stood up proudly and I told them, my 3 boys, Joshua, David, and my youngest, Adam. Slowly, my blue stars turned gold. My baby Adam's was the first to turn gold, and 4 weeks later, it was Joshua's. I wrote to my David to cheer him up, and I told him that he was no longer the middle son, but the only son. David's star turned gold before he received my letter.
I grew up in a large family in a small town south of the Twin Cities. My dream was to become a medic. After graduating high school, I attended a medical program at our junior college. Having a lot of brothers all kept us looking out for one another. When one had the measles, we all had the measles. When one had the mumps, we all had the mumps. I guess that's why I became a medic. Then I became a Vietnam medic. My father, as I left home, took me in his arms and said, I've raised 6 children, all of them boys, and now I'm sending my youngest off to war. That was the first and only time I've seen my father cry. When I arrived in the war zone, all I could hear was, "Get down!" I lowered my head and ran as fast as I could. I was there, I was in it, I was a part of it, and it was and is a part of me.
My first day in the OR, I looked around the room, fields rolled to bed. Chaos, the smell, the yelling, nurses yelling, doctors yelling, GIs yelling. A body was propped down on the table in front of me. A boy no more than 18 years old, and I was ordered to prep him. That meant clean him, shave him if necessary, and while you're ready, remove his arm that's just hanging by a piece of loose skin. When I received orders to transfer back to the States, I got up, put on a fresh uniform, packed my bag, and went over to the OR to say goodbye. The ventilators were popping, it was hot, it smelled of blood, yelling filled the air. It was exactly as it was the day I arrived. Nothing had changed.
Chicago, July 1968. Dear Jack, well, the boys are off in every direction these days. Hank's finally old enough to be a Cub Scout. Bruce is playing Little League, and Paul's taken an interest in girls. Paul got his driver's license yesterday, so now I have another thing to worry about. My men, they will be the death of me yet.
Vietnam, August 1968. Betsy dear, I I've been thinking, if anything happens to me, don't let the memories of me keep you from marrying again. I just don't want you to be alone. Life should be lived to its fullest. So go for it. Live life. That's what it's for.
No, Jack, you shouldn't say that. You will come home, Jack. I believe you'll be resuming your fatherly and husbandly duties before long.
Keep smiling. Put on some makeup. Buy yourself a new dress. Give the boys a hug and discipline when needed. And pave the road of your life for new adventures. As long as I'm remembered, I'll not really be dead. I'll always be there for Paul, Bruce, and Hank.
No, Jack, you shouldn't go on and on like that. You will come home, Jack. I know you will. I was planning on buying a new dress, and I'll have the boys all starched and ironed and standing at attention when you walk up that walk and into my arms. The boys send their love, Betsy.
Love you, Betsy. Jack.
I'm a proud Jewish mother. Folks no longer stop to congratulate me, but to console me. Chin up, I told them. What greater sacrifice can a mother make than to give her precious sons for her country? The Gold Star mothers have a heavy burden to bear, but I stand behind our president in these times of trials and tribulations. He gives me great strength.
My boys never left me. I still see them climbing that big tree in the backyard or scraping a knee while skating, chasing after the dog or running after the cat, collecting cans and newspapers for the war effort. Before they left, they started a victory garden and gave me strict instructions on how to keep it running. Giving up a son is the hardest part of being a mother. Losing a son to the war effort is the agony of motherhood. No more will I call up to the stairs to them. No more will I lay awake worrying when they don't come home. No more will I fall asleep in peace when I hear the key in the door. No more.
I know you heard of the USO girls who toured behind the lines to entertain the troops.
Well, we were the donut gals. The gals that drove 2-ton army trucks and served coffee.
And donuts to the men.
Well, we called ourselves the donut gals. Alice is my name from down south Alabama.
I'm Alice from California, IA.
Alice, my donut companion, and me.
Ended up somewhere in France to serve hot coffee and donuts to the men.
So Alice and I would load our old trucks up with sacks of flour, sugar, and coffee,
And cans of cooking oil.
and hit the road by 5 every morning.
What a bumpy ride. Did you know that a greater percentage of donut gals were killed in action than any other women's services?
Put that in your record books, Uncle Sam. In 1945, Alice and I split up.
Alice, was sent to Lake Park.
And well, lucky me, I was sent to England where my donut days continued and my jitterbugging days began. There was this very large, empty warehouse building where the boys assembled to receive their next assignment. There was lots of music and the boys loved to jitterbug. Give them hot coffee and donuts and jitter they would. And oh boy, did those boys love to jitterbug.
France, Christmas Eve, 1944. Helen, my darling, my days are bluer than ever, and when I think of you, I have to fight back the tears so my buddies won't see. All of us guys left here in Company B are sitting around in our dirty uniforms, heavy boots and heavy hearts, and saying, "Peace on earth, goodwill to men."
Brooklyn, New York, Christmas Day, 1944. Sweet, sweet buddy. Mr. Berlin hit it right this year. We don't have to dream anymore. We have a white Christmas. I woke up this morning to a glorious day and I was elated, but only for a minute. And then I prayed that this will be the last Christmas we have to spend apart. Buddy, I love you.
I love you, Helen.
I love you, Jack.
I love you, Johnny.
I love you, Agnes.
It was bitter cold the day when I landed in France in 1918. A day that was much like many days in Bangor, Maine. I was an operator for the telephone company in Bangor when I heard that the 223 girls who would be shipped to France, who were sworn into the U.S. Army Signal Corps telephone units as soldiers. Think of that. The first woman to serve in the Army, and yet at home, who didn't have the right to vote.
After my basic training, I served a tour in Afghanistan when my truck was hit. 3 of my fellow soldiers were killed and I was seriously wounded. When I woke, I discovered that my legs were so badly damaged that they both had to be amputated just under the knees. I survived, as you can see, and with my prosthesis I can walk as normal as any of you here. The downer is that I can't dance no more. Can't wear skirts or dresses, just pants for me. But that's okay, I can live with that.
There's just one place for me.
Dear Agnes, I can't explain why I've not been writing more. But you see, here in this mess, there's not a soldier who knows which way to point his rifle. We see enemy tracers light up the sky. We hear the gunfire. And sometimes we just get lucky. Like the other day, when we captured those North Koreans.
Atlanta, April 1954. Dear Johnny, I let your mom and dad read your letter. You should have seen your dad's face when he read about the 28 prisoners you captured. That was something else for him to brag about. You're so thoughtful, honey, and that's one of the many, many things that I just love so much about you, Johnny, darling. There isn't any more news, so I'll close for now.
Today we encountered face-to-face a team of North Koreans. They were lobbing grenades and firing at us. As they charged, I picked up my gun and I shot one straight in his face. Agnes, I can't tell you how bad I feel to have killed another man. I instantly asked God for forgiveness, and I will go to confession the first chance I get. Agnes, please forgive me as well.
We put little Johnny in kindergarten this week. I do believe it was harder for me to leave him than it was for him on the first day. He seems to be having a wonderful time with all the boys and girls, and he's learning his alphabet and numbers so fast. Johnny, I pray that when this war is over, there will be no more wars, so that little Johnny and all the boys and girls can grow up in a world full of peace and freedom. I know that day will come, and I'm doing my part to see that it does.
After arriving in France, I was assigned to a station in Chaumont. The work was hard. Sometimes the noises of war made it difficult to hear through the engine and telephone lines. We had to scream in order to be heard through the other end of the lines. All the girls screaming into their instruments at the same time. I knew I was doing something important. The excitement, the constant noise kept me going. I was sent from Chaumont to Sicily to reinforce the girls there. The weather conditions were awful. It was cold and it rained constantly. My boots and my skirt were caked with mud. On November 11, 1980, gradually the war had ceased. I remember that day well. It was another blustery cold day in November. After arriving back to the States, the Hello Girls were told that we were no longer sworn in members of the U.S. Army. After failing to persuade the Congress in 1930, granting more than 50 bills to the Hello Girls were introduced into Congress. Finally, in 1978, we seceded. Congress passed the bill to recognize the 223 women noted as the Confederates, but only a handful of us were still alive.
A long and winding road that leads to your door.
Chicago, September 1968. Dear Jack, well, it's been a week since your last letter, and I'm just hoping and praying that you're so busy finding sources you haven't had the time to write. Everything's all right here. Please just send us a card to let us know you're okay. The boys are a great comfort. That's it.
Dear Mom,
There is sand everywhere. They're calling it Desert Storm. I'm okay, Mom, but some of my buddies are dead. Don't worry about me, Mom.
the news journalists and the film crews are embedded in this now, Mom. But I believe they aren't telling the truth to the folks back home. Between the wind and the sand, they seem to be looking through the rose-colored glass. The horrors and the hardships and the total disbelief we aren't living through hell doesn't seem to impress them. So don't believe everything you see on the TV and read in the newspaper and the magazines. We are living through hell.
We lost our first female soldier today. She was only a supply officer, but still, women in war.
I need some sleep, Mom. But send my best to my big brother Bruce and Paul. Love, Hank.
Somewhere in France, January 1945. The weather is rotten here. Christmas and New Year's were just 2 more days for us. I wish I had some good news to send Sweet Pea, but I don't.
January, Brooklyn, New York, 1945. Dear buddy, I got a job down at the Navy Yards. It's hard work, but I don't complain. Women all over this country are going to work and getting jobs and feeding their families, even with the rations of bread and butter. Last week, there was no butter to be had, so we bought this stuff called oleomargarine. It comes in a block, white as lard, with this little packet of yellow coloring that you stir in until it looks like butter, but it tastes like blood.
Sugar, you are sugar enough for me. Keep your head held high and don't lose that beautiful smile that I fell in love with. And don't worry about the butter, or me. I'll butter you up when I get home.
I love you, buddy.
I love you too, Helen.
Tainan Province, Nam, October 1968. Little brother, take this advice from me. Stay as far away from this godforsaken army and this crap hole called Nam. Trust me, being a grunt in this country ain't no fun. Don't be like me. Go to college or get good grades or burn your draft card and head straight to Canada. Just do this one thing for me, little brother. And if I ever get home, I promise to be the best big brother that I never was. And oh yeah, give Ma a big kiss for the both of us. I've never said this before, but I love you, kid. Big brother.
Chicago, October 1968. Dear Jack, it's been 3 weeks now and still no word from you. The boys are really starting to worry. Please just send us a card to let us know you're okay. I'm holding up okay, but I did buy that new dress today. Please send us a card. Betsy.
Step one, you say we need to talk.
I suffer from what they call post-traumatic stress disorder. When I started therapy, I thought my symptoms were just because I lost my legs. I don't know. I might have passed out. I don't remember anything. But I was the victim of a terrorist attack on my unit, and 3 of my fellow soldiers were killed. 2 men and 1 woman. Did you know that 1 out of every 10 people serving in the armed forces today is a woman? And I read somewhere that 220,000 or 11% of troops sent to Afghanistan and Iraq were women. In the Vietnam War, the percentage of women to men was much, much smaller, and the majority of those women were nurses. Not so in today's army. Now there's a large number of women who aren't thought of as sisters, wives, or sweethearts.
Sometimes I go to the icebox, open it, and just stand there wondering what it was I came here for. Memory's a funny thing at my age. Madge McAllister, I say to myself, what's gotten into you? And then I hear the tick-tock tick of the old regulator call, and I'm back to one day in June 1944. After high school, most of the boys from Baylor went to work on mills or on their family farms. Few, if any, ever went to college. As
For a few extra dollars, they joined the National Guard and spent one night a month playing soldier. My brother Aaron joined as soon as he was old enough. When the war began in Europe, his entire unit was called into active duty. I worked as the Western Union girl in Baylor, Kentucky, and it was my job to turn the teletype machine on and connect with Lexington. On June 6, 1944, our boys were moved to a beach in France the Army called Omaha. Heroes all, over 10,000 men lost their lives and were buried on the bluff overlooking the sea. On that morning in Lexington, I turned the teletype machine on, the minute warmed up I typed, "Good morning, Lexington. Go ahead." And the reply came, "Good morning, Baylor. We have casualties." The machine began to sputter and clicking out tape faster than I had ever seen. I did my best to put my tape in a tank of water, and with my thimble and ruler, stripped it onto a piece of Western Union stationery. The Secretary of War desires me to express my feelings of regret for click, click, click. Another regret, another name, another address. Click, click, click. Regrets, John Sears. Click, click, click. Regrets, Albert Stallings. Click, click, click. Regrets, Bobby Barnes. Regrets, Dudley Dickerson. Regrets, Andy Barrows. All in all, there were more regrets than I could even think to remember. As lunchtime approached, I was pretty much in the daze when click, click, click. It is with profound regret that I click. Aaron McAllister. Dear brother. On the 50th anniversary of D-Day, I went to France and past the rows and rows of white crosses, out on the bluff overlooking the sea, I found my beloved brother Aaron. Now, what was it that I came to the icebox for again? Oh yeah, milk.
My funny